Hi everyone, we are Agustina, Macarena and Eugenia, and in this video we are going to develop the topic of our research paper on the significance of self-learning of the pronunciation of English as a second language.
It is a fact that English has become a global language through time, as a result of its spreading around the globe and the wide range of people that use it nowadays. Not to mention the fact that it is the main language chosen for international trading, commerce, communication, traveling, and, perhaps most significantly, the internet, which changed the way people think about and study languages in general.
Before we begin, we'd like to analyze the title of our work, breaking it down in order to explain its terms, and additionally, the reason why we've decided to focus our minds upon them. Beginning with self-learning, we have taken into account the concepts of motivation and autonomy. More specifically, how an intrinsic motivation leads a second language learner to acquire English autonomously. Leiva and Spada, the women we can see in the picture, divide the concept between learners' communicative requirements and their attitudes towards the second language community, as to be able to recognize the communicative value of the second language and to be motivated to achieve competence when using it.
Regarding language learning, Jack Reacher says that it is a mental activity, one in which the learner is a lone scientist or explorer, building up his or her understanding of language from exposure to and experience of it. It is indeed not an easy task, though we might infer that learning a second language involves organization, discipline, and a strong commitment from the learner.
As we have mentioned, the spread and globalization of English plus the massive worldwide digitalization are both significant factors that contribute to the actual necessity of learning English. Such a learning process has evolved differently throughout time, including the student's exposure to audio and video examples of speech, which are directly connected to the real use of language.
Our research on this topic began with a survey directed to a general public that consisted of 5 questions in total, through which it was aimed to identify and assess their self-learning skills related to characteristics of pronunciation. 4 of these questions were close-ended, while the last one open-ended, giving the respondents the chance to answer as they pleased. The surveyed were a total of 68, all Argentinian, between the ages of 17 and 65, with the average age being between 20 and 23 years old.
The results obtained from each question reflect the level of interest and concern that the respondents had towards the English language acquisition and its pronunciation. In fact, our questions were intended to provide several options in each, just in case some respondents decided to pick more than one option, which we thought would be highly possible.
The first question was, how did you first encounter the English language? For this question, we have first deduced that it might have been through school, and we were certainly right in our thoughts. As we can see in the graphic, from the total of respondents, 39 chose school, which is only 4 people more than in the following option, multimedia, chosen by 35 people. The least chosen options, only picked by 18 people, were institutes and family. Here, the significant influence of school and multimedia when having a first approximation to the language is certainly shown.
Following the first question, we aim to know whether they have ever had an interest in learning the English language and its pronunciation apart from the schooling or academic environment, having given them 3 options, yes, no, and maybe. In the following pie chart, it is shown the total of answers, displaying the highest percentage in the option yes by 88.2%, while maybe got the second place, chosen by 8.8%. Finally, no was only picked by a total of 2.9%. Having received such answers, it is evident that the vast majority of the surveyed expressed a keen interest in learning the English language and its pronunciation.
Our third question was intended to get to know through what means our respondents try to learn English and its pronunciation, including several options designed to captivate their attention at first sight, as for them to know which one or ones they were going to select. Thus, the most picked answer was through music and films, picked by a vast majority of the people, by 52 out of the total. Secondly, apps and games by 28, less than half the total. By a slight difference of 6 people, conversation and books were the third and the fourth picked answers, on 23 versus 17 people. Academia and institute turned out to be the least chosen, by only 9 people. We can see that listening to music and watching films were the most popular methods for learning English rather than a formal educational setting.
Considering the fact that English contains various aspects and skills, such as grammar, vocabulary, listening comprehension, and speaking, for this next question we have taken such skills and attempted to discover whether the respondents have ever focused on some of them while studying the language. Our collected responses displayed the highest percentage in listening and speaking, by a 79% and a 70.6%. Vocabulary then stands for 50.4% of the answers, and finally, grammar, only selected by 23.5% of the total. Evidently, most people have a preference in learning the language mainly for communicative skills, rather than studying a more structured part of the language, which involves grammatical rules or extensive lists of vocabulary.
For the last question, we have included the possible motivational factors that led them to learn the English language, having had the chance to write down their options as well as choosing the ones already given. Therefore, curiosity became the primary motivational factor, comprising 72.1% out of the total, with academic motives after it covering 32.4% overall. The third factor was labour, which also covered an important part of the percentages, peaked by 25%, and finally the other options section, covering 14.7%, included personal interests and desire to understand English language content and multimedia. Just a few also stated that their motives were either having been forced by their families to do so, or as a result of living abroad.
This thorough investigation and experience lead us to certain conclusions, some of which we infer before and others that we are going to display followingly. First, we discovered that intrinsic motivation here comes from curiosity, personal interest, and other approaches, rather than from a real necessity to learn English. Secondly, we noted that the purpose of getting involved in this learning process has to do with the real and practical use of the language, namely achieving intelligibility rather than focusing on the structural part of the language.
In a third place, it is learning, a cognitive activity that occurs only involving the learner. This means that learning is independent from any instruction or teaching. Then we can place the importance of input or exposure to natural English speech. This can be reached through apps, multimedia resources, videos, coursebooks, etc. While in a traditional class, teachers are in charge of making this input appropriate for the students. In this self-learning process, is the learner the one who fulfills the task, paying particular attention to certain features of pronunciation.
Having covered these points, let us cite J. Richards again, the author who best summarizes our ideas. The internet has become one of the best tools to encourage learners' autonomy, since by supplying them with a great amount of multimedia content and different strategies, they have more freedom on choosing what they are going to learn and how they are going to learn it. Henceforth, motivation, autonomy, freedom, the internet, and multimedia content are the pillars of this particular self-learning process.
All things considered, we will go back to the main purpose of our work, that is highlighting the significance of the self-learning process of English pronunciation as a second language. We conclude that it is important to recognize this phenomenon as a fact and as a process that many people currently undergo. Even though it is a non-formal way of learning, and we are aware of this, it is learning in the end, and to a view what it should be regarded as a viable option if one wants to learn about the practicalities that the English language conveys.
Well, this is all for our video. We really hope it's been useful for you.
Bye!
Bye.